My name is Ben Omollo. I'm a CPA. I have a background and interest in strategy and development, finance, and governance. So one of the things that I try to engage in is social justice and development. So it's a pleasure for me to be with you. I was told to start at 11, so it's 6 minutes after 11, but we shall try to have some conversation and interaction so that I can then answer a couple of your questions in terms of the topic, which is public oversight mechanisms, the issues of public participation, which is really the foundation. Then we'll talk about petitions, memoranda, papers, barazas, and then also what I think is the private member motions, which I will try to elucidate how that happens. But the beginning point then, if we can start with this issue of separation of National Treasury from the executive, it's one of the issues that has been topical, and it could be one where you would then do a memorandum. But the argument has been that as long as the National Treasury remains as part and parcel of the executive, then there is a bias, and that the National Treasury then does not see its mandate as fulfilling the financial responsibilities of the country, but then tends to lean towards favoring the executive and operating at the behest of the executive, especially the national executive. So one of the things that people have been arguing in terms of public finance is to say the National Treasury needs to be independent and run by an independent person, because now we have got two levels of government. And so when we say, for example, that debt is the first charge, then they must have the roster of debt and know that this month we are paying this amount as our priority. Then the next priority is to distribute money equitably every month, because the law, the constitution says there should be predictability in funding. So the counties complain because we never hear national government people having delayed payments, but the county has delayed payments. So how does that arise? Because the CS then first ensure that the national government, and especially parliament, national parliament, have all their resources. We only hear struggles between the county and the judiciary. And we have been saying that should not be the case. When you have your envelope, you must be able to say, I'll pay my debt, and then the balance I will equitably provide for all the other arms of government, including the county governments, so that there's a sense of objectivity. If people are crying, we all know that parliament is below by 25%, judiciary has also not received 25%, counties have not received 25%, and even the national government has not received 25%. So that has been the argument, so that the office holder is independent of being persuaded in one direction or the other. So let me now turn to the issues of public oversight mechanisms. Now, a number of offices exist to also provide public oversight, such as the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Controller of Budget. Those are also independent entities. Of course, Parliament and Senate are also supposed to provide public oversight in terms of reviewing the audit reports and then bringing, whether it's the national government entities or the county government entities, to answer questions. However, if you do have your constitution, I want us to go to chapter 11, and I want to make some quotes there. That's devolved government. Objects of devolution. That's Article 174. It says, the objects of the devolution of government are A, to promote democratic and accountable exercise of power. We should underline the word democratic and accountable exercise of power. B, to foster national unity by recognizing diversity. C, to give powers of self-governance to the people and enhance the participation of the people in the exercise of the powers of the state and in making decisions affecting them. So C is very critical. D, to recognize the right of communities to manage their own affairs and to further their development. So D is also important. E, to protect and promote the interests and rights of minorities and marginalized communities. F, to promote social and economic development and the provision of proximate, easily accessible services throughout Kenya. G, to ensure equitable sharing of national and local resources throughout Kenya. And H, to facilitate the decentralization of state organs, their functions and services from the capital of Kenya. And I, to enhance checks and balances and the separation of powers. So the principle of devolution here is where we actually get found fundamentally how we changed our previous governance system so that there is a greater sense of accountability. But I also want us to then turn to Article 118. This is on Parliament, National Parliament, which is basically the legislature. So public access and participation, that's Article 118. 1. Parliament shall, A, conduct its business in an open manner, and its sittings and those of its committees shall be open to the public. This means any one of us can go into Parliament. That's where we should be asking the questions about accessibility. B, facilitate public participation and involvement in the legislative and other business of Parliament and its committees. 2, Parliament may not exclude the public or any media from any sitting unless in exceptional circumstances the relevant speaker has determined that there are justifiable reasons for the exclusion. Right to petition Parliament, that's 119. Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. Parliament shall make provision for the procedure for the exercise of this right. So this particular issue about petition is a right, and it is to anything that you may deem necessary. Okay? So every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including to enact, amend, or repeal any legislation. So for example, I was reading this morning, KRA, so they have brought this issue of increased charges on small vehicles, and they're saying it was because of a previous error in not doing it. I mean, everybody, well, not everybody. If you're a hardworking Kenyan, you'll always start your life with a small car, a Demio, a what. So when they increase those taxes, who suffers most? It is those who are starting out, okay? And you then cause disproportionality between the taxes on the small vehicles and the big vehicles. Now, the big vehicles are for people who have made it, and so it's a luxury. And so as we approach the reading of the budget and the finance bill, these are the kind of things which you petition, okay? So what is a petition? 1, a petition is a formal written request. Typically, it is signed by many people, appealing to an authority in respect of a particular cause. So when you have a petition, there must be a cause that you are trying to pursue. There must be something that you are trying to advocate for. So you could have a petition, for example, on access to education by a particular group that you feel do not get access or a right. So a petition would generally be one in which you prepare it and then you put several signatures. If you remember last year, the whole issue of the finance bill, there was a petition. Many people gave their views and they said, no, 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 no. So just hold on, I just deal with this. Sorry, it's a Saturday and there are all these things happening. So, for example, the finance bill for last year, we had a lot of petitions where people were trying to give feedback to say that the taxes were unreasonable. Now, generally, it needs to be written. If you think about it, the Rose Njeri case is an excellent discussion, and we will need to see how the courts. I feel bad for the lady, but one of the important things with the court processes is that it brings clarity to a process. So if the judge is seized of the matter and decides to get it to go to the logical conclusion, there may be clarity brought out. One of the judges whom I liked very much was Justice George Odunga when he was in the Constitutional Court. He used to always bring a lot of clarity to what government should have done in terms of process. If you read Odunga's judgments, they were very, very robust in terms of constitutional or JR, the judicial review. So I hope that in this particular case, she will get, and there'll be clarity brought out of her matter, because what she did was to prepare a form. The only thing is that it was electronic in nature. But basically what Rose Njeri was doing is preparing a petition that was electronic in nature and allowing other people to come in and sign it and provide extra conversation on it. So what we should be hoping the courts will be able to give is to say, this is a petition, it's an electronic petition, and there was nothing wrong. So that then we can have robust engagement, because a petition is supposed to be written and it is appealing to an authority. In this instance, the authority is the National Treasury and the Budget Committee of the National Assembly. Now, for a petition, as I have mentioned, it's got to be very clear about your cause. And the cause could be anything. As we have read in the Constitution, it could be on any matter. You could even petition on an existing legislation or one that is still coming up, or any other subject matter that you feel is of interest to us as a nation. You can petition Parliament to then review a particular position. The other one is a memorandum. Now, a memorandum is generally a written message, as opposed to a petition, which is trying to plead on a specific thing. A memorandum is just a note. This is the kind of document that comes through when people are being vetted. So when I was going for the vetting for the CEC, I got some memorandums, I didn't get, they sent to the vetting authority, which was the county assembly, on different issues. So one of them, the memorandums, and you could see this also for the IEBC. When the IEBC was going through the vetting of the 7 new members, people wrote. Now, a memorandum is just a note. So, for example, people raised concern that the proposed chair had a relationship with Nanok, and Nanok is now in the executive office of the president. Does that create a conflict of interest? There was the registrar of political parties. She's a state officer. How does she apply for a job? And because you're not supposed to be a state, you need to have resigned from a state office to apply for this kind of thing. So a couple of those are memorandums. They are valid, but it seems that our vetting processes do not take or robustly engage with those issues. The other thing that we have been trying to raise, especially when you're being vetted, is that the memorandum should be sent to you in advance. Because what tends to happen is that we get ambushed. So you're sitting there, you have come as a CEC for finance, you're being vetted for that position, and then one Gabriel Achayo, who knows me well, has written how I disappeared with a young girl in 1965, and I have got no clue. So it throws you off, you're caught off guard in most cases. But if you had received the memorandums, let's say a week in advance to your vetting, then you would prepare adequate responses, which you send back to the vetting authority, so that they then clear off some and only bring to the public for the ones which are material and are subject to engagement. Otherwise, the way we are using the vetting process sometimes can be very, very embarrassing. And this is one of the concerns I have, that then you get men and women of integrity, because of how your name can be dragged, they tend not to apply for these positions. And for me, I think it's an intentional thing that we do in Kenya. So sometimes you'll go for these positions, and the embarrassment during the live interviews can be sometimes pretty heavy, including some of them asking some very unintelligent questions. A paper. Papers, on the other hand, are documents that you can write to any entity, and they tend to be proposals or concepts or position papers. Now, one of the things that we need, and I will take this together with the members' private motions, a good number of us do not engage with Parliament or with the county assemblies because we assume that they are all knowing. That is not true. One of the things we need to be able to come about is, for example, if you've gone for a benchmarking, or you've visited another country, or you have had an idea with a couple of your friends, you can write a position paper, which you then send to a relevant committee. A number of them would generally review, take it in, and would be able to change a policy or a position, because normally government will come up with a policy paper, which would then be translated into a cabinet memo, and then it gets the approval. So one of the things that you can do is to create these position papers or proposal papers or concept papers. And if you have a good friend, especially in Parliament or one of the clerks, it can really go through. The other one is the Parliamentary Budget Office, which could also be a good place, because they tend to be professionals. They will definitely read and review your document and put it into some of the documents that are being created. Another one that you have raised are the barazas. The barazas and town halls are opportunities for engagement, especially by a leader or a couple of leaders. The advantage you have with barazas and town halls is that it allows for question and answers, and it is less acrimonious. Of course, it depends, because sometimes the opposing politician could send a couple of goons to disrupt the meeting, or some people could have some cheerleaders. I think one paper today has written an article on goons, paid goons for disrupting meetings. So the advantage with barazas is that if it is well formatted and framed, it can create a lot more of mental engagement and exchange of ideas. And so this is one of the things that we should be looking out to, because then there is clarity, the environment is much better. There could have been preparation in terms of the papers or the discussion points. And so it's healthier, because then you can have a two-way conversation, and it is more engaging. So we then have got that. The other one that also provides for public oversight and mechanisms could be private, they're normally called private members' motions or questions, which any member of the public can send to their representative, and they will be able to raise the particular concern. So as we look at public oversight mechanisms, we have got to look at it from the perspective that it is anchored in the Constitution, and that there are other legislations. Different counties have also developed their own public participation legislation. Now, what is important is that we seem to engage a lot more with the budgeting process, which is critical, and it is fine. But beyond the budgeting process are also different laws that get passed, and then they ask. Normally, you'll find either the Senate clerk or the parliamentary clerk putting it out there with a gazette notice and a timeline by which you should be able to send your feedback. I think one of the concerns we have with this memorandum or public engagement is the summary. I think one quote, there may be a court case, I need to look for it, but one quote, I think it was Justice Odunga, who said that public participation should not be happening in expensive and exclusive hotels. So he said it is not cosmetic. There must be real engagement. There was also the requirement that a summary of the meetings be provided. Now, these are the kind of things which we need to ask ourselves. When there's a petition, like the ones on the finance bill, should we get a summary? Because if we have got, how many Kenyans are we? If 5 million Kenyans said no on a clause, how does it pass? Okay? So we should be starting to demand that those particular memorandums should be published. Now, of course, it's very, very complex because, of course, with AI tools, it may be able to summarize, but it's very, very difficult. I remember when I was the CEC for finance, and you would go around the 30 wards in Siaya. If you receive about 100 comments or people participating by each ward, you end up with 3,000. If it is 1,000 people, you'll end up with 30,000. It's very, very difficult to harmonize and summarize them. But I think with AI tools, we should be able to get that so that we then understand what were the 10 top issues, what were the main issues. We've got to find a way of summarizing. But of course, because also the Constitution talks about the marginalized people, then we must also say, what are the other just one or two people who said something that may not be popular, but could be significant? So that is the challenge with public participation, is that you could get a lot more feedback, and how do you then summarize and harmonize them? I want to then turn my attention to other public oversight mechanisms, and these are the audit reports and the parliamentary and Senate hearings. These are also open to the public, though there seems to be a lot of restriction in how you access parliament or the county assemblies, but they're open to the public. And perhaps we need to push more of this. The audit reports of different counties may have up to 10. If they have different other entities, like now we have a couple of counties having towns or gazetting towns and urban areas, those ones do separate accounts as well. Then if you have got agencies, like the water bodies in various counties, like Siaya Water, Siaya Bondo Water Company, you have the one in Machakos Water, the Mavoko Water, that's a separate company, but it is under the county, so it is audited separately. So when the counties or the national government accounts are done, you will have the direct county accounts, then you will have the funds, the revenues, then the operations, and then you will also have the various funds, because they have emergency funds especially, then they have got equalization, and then you've got the quasi or the agencies under that particular entity and the towns. So it is important that you engage with all these accounts, because the auditor generally raises a lot of questions in those particular financial documents, and it's an opportunity for you to also give feedback and raise concerns. You can then generate a petition or a memorandum out of those documents, because they are objective, publicly available documents. The other one is the control of budget reports. Again, the control of budget reports also are objective, and they are found on the website, and so you can raise a petition or a memorandum on it. One of the things we have tried to raise with the control of budget reports is that she needs to say how much of the money for the counties or the equitable share has been remitted, because that helps people get an understanding. If they have only sent 6 months worth of equitable share, and it is already the month of June, then you can see why the counties are not doing a good job. And then when the balance of the money, 3-4 months worth of money is sent in the last month, then this is where abuse comes in, because then you have all this huge amount of money, they need to try and clear it. Then you have all manner of fictitious things coming through. So, in summary, public oversight is anchored on public participation. The Constitution provides for public participation. There are various legislations that have tried at the national and county level to bring clarity in terms of public participation, and there's also been the court rulings that clarify what public participation is all about. As I've mentioned, a petition is a request typically signed by many people to an authority. So it could be anybody, communications authority, any of these authority entities, you could write to them. The water authority, you could write to them and then raise concerns. Or NEMA, those are places where you send your petitions. A memorandum, on the other hand, is a written message. Largely, we use this when we're doing vetting. People write a lot of memorandums. Then there are position papers that I have talked about, which you can also generate concepts and ideas that can be used by various committees of the House. Barazas and town halls are open engagements, and they're normally scheduled and planned in advance, and one can use them effectively. And then, of course, there's a private member's motions, which could raise specific questions or concerns. And also, you could send a question or a concern through your member of parliament or your MCA, and that will find its way into a place of conversation. I want to stop there for now so that we then have a more interactive engagement. And so you could ask questions, and I would then endeavor to respond to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate for that information, knowing, I think the separation of what is a petition, what is a memorandum, and all those is very helpful so that then, because sometimes you can do something, but then it's rejected in the technicality because you did not do the right paper. And so for that reason, it's thrown out because it's not the right paper or the right communication that you made. At this point, I would like to invite, I don't know if Machango is here or whoever is moderating, to just moderate the session for Q&A, questions, comment, and answers for our session. I don't know who, is it you, Machango, or who is helping with that?
So, Gabriel, I'm here.
Okay, Rahel, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, guys. Any question? And we try to prepare a chance so that everyone can be able to ask their questions. You can write them down, I can read them, or you can just ask your question, at least moja to everyone. Anyone?
Let me start off by asking a question, and I know this has always become, sometimes when is the right time to say engage with a petition? Because I know sometimes, especially for the finance bill, I know the process starts way early, way so early. So, and I know, Mr. Ben, you've in a different context, and some of these guys who are here might not have gotten a chance to hear you say when is the right time to engage. Could you just highlight that? Because sometimes we might really want to engage, but the timing might be off. And so probably our views or our comments might not be considered because the timing is off. When is the right time to engage, especially with the finance bill or some of these other things that might come up? Maybe, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel. As Kenyans, we seem to have been caught up so much with the finance bill. As I have said before, and I try to reiterate this so that people get a good understanding, the finance bill is the last thing in the process of the budget making process. So the finance bill, and by the way, the law allows it to run over. They have 90 days after the Appropriation Act to enact a finance bill. So both at the county and at the national government. Now, one of the things we've been trying to push is to ensure that the finance bill comes together with the appropriation. The appropriation is the expenditure side. Now, the budget process generally begins in August for the next financial year. So even now, as we are in June, immediately in July, we begin the new financial year. In August, the CS for Finance will send out a budget calendar for the financial year FY 26-27. That's when the process begins. In August, the CECs for Finance will then domesticate that same memo and circulate it to their team. Then there are specific documents that are required in the process and the calendar The first document at the county is known as the Annual Development Plan that is required by the end of September. So out of the CIDP, the County Integrated Development Plan, that's 5 years, they extract 1 year and then focus on it. The second document at the county that is required is in October. It is called the County Review and Outlook Paper. That's the one which tries to temper what has happened in the previous financial year, and that's the outlook of the next financial year, and also understands the current situation. Then in February, you have got the County Fiscal Strategy Paper that starts giving direction in terms of what will be in the budget. And then you have the County Debt Management Strategy Paper by 28th February. And then you have the budget estimates by 30th April. Now, in February, when they are submitting the County Fiscal Strategy Paper, they also provide what is known as a revenue raising measure. The revenue raising measure is what gets translated into the finance bill. Okay? That's where you start seeing what they intend to do to raise the money that will fund their budget. Now, the approval then, you send this to the County Assembly by 30th April, those are the estimates, and then it has to be approved by 30th June. Then the finance bill has a window up to 30th September for it to be approved. Remember again, if the finance bill is not approved, you just go back to the previous finance bill. So there's never a lacuna. At the national government, it's the same process. They have they are guided by the medium-term expenditure framework, the MTEF4, which is currently the one that's ongoing. They will then extract and do the forecast for this financial year or for the next financial year. Then they will have a budget review and outlook paper that's also due in October. Then they have a budget policy statement that Cabinet has to approve by theirs is mid-February, because the counties must also use it. Now, the budget policy statement is really the fundamental document we should be looking at as the national level. It also has got the revenue-raising measures, because they must submit a balanced-ish budget. They also talk about what they'll be floating. Will they be doing another bond or which loans will be going into specific capital expenditures. So you see that immediately in the budget policy statement, and then they do their estimates, which also must be submitted by 30th, and then the committees meet, and then you have the approval by 30th June, so that by 1st July, you have got the budget in place and the instruments. Now, the main issue here when you're submitting to Parliament these documents or to the County Assembly is you've got to have the Appropriation Act and any other legislation that will give effect to the budget. So you can have your draft finance bill, you can have a draft legislation that changes other items or other aspects of the budget. Remember that the finance bill is generally an omnibus type of legislation. The finance bill is one of those bills that hits other legislations and amends specific sections of other legislations. So one needs to read it from that perspective so that you understand the changes being proposed that will have an effect even on another legislation.